Stand up right now and apologize to my son for your sabotage or clean out your desk. William Blackstone's voice cut through the boardroom like a blade, his finger pointing directly at me across the mahogany table. The 12 board members and senior staff sat in dead silence, waiting for my response. Andrew Blackstone, William's 32-year-old son and our newly promoted VP of Strategy, smirked from his chair beside the executive team. My name is Michael Thompson, I'm 48 years old, and that moment proved my 22 years as Chief Operations Manager at Apex Defense Technologies meant nothing to the Blackstone family. So let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started 10 months ago. Back then, I was running operations with a team of 16 solid engineers and technicians. We specialized in aerospace manufacturing for defense contracts, and I knew every rivet, every specification, every safety protocol by heart. After serving 12 years as a Marine sergeant and working my way up from the shop floor, I'd earned respect through actual work, not family connections. Then William hired his son Andrew. First day on the job, Andrew rolled up in a brand new Tesla Model S, wearing a custom suit that cost more than most of my guys made in a month. He had an MBA from Stanford and exactly zero real-world aerospace experience. According to William, Andrew was there to modernize our operations and bring innovative cost management to an aging workforce. Red flag number 1. But I figured every boss's kid deserves a chance to prove themselves. Michael, you'll be mentoring Andrew, William announced during our department meeting. Show him our processes. He's got some fresh ideas about optimizing efficiency. Andrew's first fresh idea was cutting our materials testing protocols by 50% to accelerate production schedules. When I explained that aerospace contracts require specific safety certifications, he waved me off. Look, Mike, I understand you're comfortable with traditional methods, but we need to embrace lean manufacturing principles. My father expects measurable improvements, not status quo thinking. That's when I realized we had a serious problem. This wasn't just nepotism. This was dangerous nepotism applied to aircraft component manufacturing. Now here's where things get interesting. My son Danny is serving as an Air Force crew chief on C-130s right now. He's the guy who signs off on whether those birds are safe to fly. So when some MBA kid starts talking about cutting corners on aircraft parts, it's not just about business for me, it's about bringing my boy home alive. The real trouble started 2 months after Andrew joined when we landed the North Star Aerospace contract. Worth $350 million over 4 years, it was the biggest deal in our company's 28-year history. The contract specified manufacturing wing structural components using titanium grade 5 with specific heat treatment requirements and stress testing standards. Andrew was assigned to lead the cost analysis phase while I handled technical specifications. His initial reports showed production costs that would save $28 million across the entire contract duration. When I questioned the numbers, he got defensive. Maybe you're not seeing the optimization opportunities here, Mike. I've identified several process improvements that could increase our profit margins by 12% while maintaining quality standards. So I took his report home that night and went through it line by line. What I found made my blood run cold. Andrew had systematically replaced titanium grade 5 specifications with aluminum 6x61, eliminated heat treatment cycles, and reduced stress testing from 3 samples per batch to 1 sample per production run. These weren't optimizations. They were fundamental alterations that would produce wing components 65% weaker than contract requirements. Andrew, these changes violate basic metallurgy principles. Aluminum alloy can't provide the stress resistance that titanium delivers. Pilots will die if this equipment fails in flight. That's your interpretation. My analysis shows aluminum can meet performance requirements at significant cost savings. My father agrees we need to think strategically about profit margins. I scheduled an emergency meeting with William the next morning. Michael, I appreciate your concerns, but Andrew has identified legitimate opportunities for improvement. His cost projections show we can increase profit margins by 12% while meeting all technical specifications. I spread the engineering reports across his desk. William, these aren't improvements. These are material substitutions that will fail FAA inspection and violate federal contract terms. We'll face criminal fraud charges if we submit equipment that doesn't match approved specifications. William leaned back in his leather chair. I think you're being overly conservative. Andrew has advanced business training from one of the top MBA programs in the country. He understands strategic optimization better than traditional approaches. Look, William, I don't care what school he went to. Aluminum melts at 12 and 20 degrees, while titanium maintains structural integrity until 3,000 degrees. The tensile strength of grade 5 titanium is 130,000 psi. Aluminum 6061 tops out at 45,000 psi. No MBA program changes basic physics. William's expression hardened. Michael, I'm going to say this once. Andrew represents the future direction of this company. If you can't adapt to new methodologies, then perhaps it's time to consider whether you're the right fit for our evolving organization. The threat was clear. Accept Andrew's dangerous modifications or find another job. Over the following 3 months, things escalated rapidly. Andrew started attending my engineering meetings uninvited, contradicting my technical decisions with cost-saving alternatives. He'd send emails to our Pentagon procurement contacts with revised specifications, copying me as if I'd approved the changes. When federal inspectors asked technical questions during site visits, Andrew would defer to me, then later blame any confusion on my unclear communication style. 3 of my best engineers, Tony Castellano, James Rodriguez, and Paul Manning, requested transfers to other departments. Not because they'd lost confidence in my abilities, but because Andrew had made it clear that association with resistant personnel would impact their career advancement opportunities. My team shrank from 16 engineers to 13, while Andrew's influence expanded throughout the organization. The breaking point came during preparation for the major FAA compliance review scheduled for November 15th. I'd spent 2 weeks documenting why Andrew's material substitutions would compromise safety and violate contract specifications. The night before our presentation, I was working late when I heard voices from the main conference room. Dad, what happens if the FAA asks technical questions I can't answer tomorrow? Don't worry, Andrew. I've already briefed the procurement team that Michael has been resistant to efficiency improvements. If there are any technical issues during the presentation, we'll frame them as his failure to provide adequate documentation support. I stopped outside the conference room door and activated my phone's recording function. But what if they want to see the original engineering specifications? Andrew's original specifications reflect outdated, overly conservative approaches that would make us non-competitive. Your analysis demonstrates we can meet all critical requirements while improving profitability. Trust me, after tomorrow's presentation, you'll be leading this entire department. That conversation changed everything. This wasn't incompetence or even standard corporate politics. This was deliberate fraud, and they were planning to destroy my career to cover their tracks. Time to fight back. I started documenting everything the next morning. Every email, every meeting, every conversation. I kept backup copies of all original engineering reports and compared them with Andrew's modified versions. The differences were staggering. He'd gone through and changed every spec we had, eliminated crucial safety tests, and reduced inspection requirements across 23 different contract items. The most dangerous change involved the wing components. My original specifications called for titanium grade 5 with Rockwell hardness of 2832 HRC after heat treatment requirements. Andrew's aluminum would provide approximately 65% less stress resistance than required titanium components. Pilots would die if this equipment failed in flight, including potentially my son Danny. But I needed more than technical documentation. I needed proof of criminal intent. The FAA compliance review was scheduled for the following Tuesday. William announced that Andrew would present our cost analysis while I handled the technical presentation. Your role is to provide documentation. Support if requested, William informed me during our Monday morning meeting. William, the FAA team will have specific questions about metallurgy, stress analysis, and fatigue testing protocols. Andrew doesn't have the engineering background to answer those technical inquiries. He has my complete confidence. That should be sufficient. I understood the setup. They were positioning Andrew to fail during the presentation, then blame me for inadequate technical support. Classic scapegoat strategy. That evening I stayed late again. Sure enough, William and Andrew were in the conference room preparing for Tuesday's presentation. I positioned myself outside the door with my phone ready. Just follow the presentation outline, William was instructing. If they ask technical questions you can't answer, explain that Michael was responsible for engineering briefings but failed to provide comprehensive documentation. What if they want to see the original specifications? There are no original specifications. Michael's analysis was incomplete and overly conservative for modern manufacturing standards. Your cost optimization study represents our official engineering position. I had it all recorded. But something Tony Castellano told me the next day made the situation much worse. Now Tony wasn't just any engineer. He was our union rep and a former Navy machinist who'd worked his way up from the shop floor just like me. We'd grabbed coffee together plenty of times over the years, talking about everything from deployment stories to raising kids. Mike, we need to talk. Not here at the office. Can you meet me at Murphy's Diner on Route 9 tonight at 8? Murphy's was a 24-hour truck stop 15 miles from the office. Tony was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back corner booth with a folder and a concerned expression. "We have a serious problem," he said without preamble. "William's been monitoring your computer activity, your emails, your phone calls from the office. He's been building a surveillance file on you for the past 2 months." Tony opened the folder and showed me activity logs. My stomach dropped as I saw the extent of the monitoring. Every document I'd accessed, every email I'd sent, every phone call I'd made from my office extension, all logged and tracked. How is this legal? Technically, company equipment allows for monitoring. But here's the concerning part. He turned to another page. Ashley Blackstone has been recording conversations throughout the building. Not just casual workplace discussions, formal meetings, private phone calls, confidential discussions with other employees. The page showed a directory of audio files organized by date and participant names. My name appeared in dozens of entries. This goes beyond normal corporate surveillance. Ashley's been systematically collecting information on anyone William considers a potential threat, including Colonel Patricia Hendricks, our primary board member. What kind of information on Patricia? Financial records, private communications, details about her military pension. William's been building leverage files on the entire board of directors. I stared at the surveillance data. This wasn't just nepotism or fraud. This was systematic corporate espionage designed to maintain control through blackmail and intimidation. "Tony, why are you showing me this?" "Because you're not the first target." Over the past 3 years, William has systematically pushed out 4 other senior managers who questioned his decisions. He replaces experienced personnel with family loyalists, then uses surveillance data to control anyone who objects to his methods. What happened to the other managers? Thomas Anderson from Quality Control was forced out after William discovered personal financial problems and threatened to report them to federal security clearance authorities. Lisa Martinez from Procurement quit after Ashley recorded her complaining about Andrew's inexperience, then William threatened to sue her for creating a hostile work environment. Tony closed the folder. William doesn't just fire people who oppose him. He destroys their careers and ensures they can't find work elsewhere in the aerospace industry. What do you want me to do? Fight back. But you'll need more than engineering reports and recorded conversations. You'll need someone with enough influence to challenge William directly. That's when Tony told me about Colonel Patricia Hendricks' background. She wasn't just our biggest board member. She was a former Air Force procurement officer with 15 years' experience in defense contract oversight. More importantly, she maintained active security clearances and ongoing relationships throughout the Pentagon procurement system. Patricia has been asking questions about our recent performance metrics. She's noticed discrepancies between reported costs and actual deliverables. I think she suspects something is wrong, but she doesn't have concrete evidence. Can you arrange a meeting? Already done. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. at Riverside Coffee downtown. She thinks you're briefing her on technical specifications for her investment review. I drove home that night with my head spinning. William's operation was more sophisticated and dangerous than I'd realized. He wasn't just covering up Andrew's incompetence. He was running a systematic scheme to defraud the FAA while eliminating anyone who might expose the truth. But now I had allies. Tony controlled the union connections, Patricia had Pentagon relationships, and I had documented evidence of fraud. The next 48 hours would determine whether we could stop this conspiracy or whether William would succeed in destroying all of us. Colonel Patricia Hendricks wasn't what I expected. At 55, she looked more like a retired college professor than a major aerospace industry board member. But when she studied my engineering documentation at Riverside Coffee the next afternoon, her questions revealed the sharp mind of someone who understood both Pentagon procurement and corporate fraud. Michael, these material substitutions aren't just cost-cutting measures. They're systematic contract violations that could result in federal criminal charges. She compared Andrew's modified specifications with my original reports. If these altered specifications were submitted to FAA procurement, we're looking at conspiracy to defraud the government. William believes he can control the investigation through surveillance and pressure tactics. He's miscalculated. Patricia pulled out her own folder. I maintain active relationships throughout Pentagon procurement. More importantly, I've been monitoring concerning trends in this company's performance metrics for the past 6 months. She handed me a financial analysis. Delivery schedules have slipped 23% since Andrew joined the organization. Quality control reports show increasing deviation from contract specifications. Most troubling, our profit margins have increased while our actual material costs should be rising due to inflation. You think William's been manipulating financial reports beyond just the North Star contract? I think this fraud extends much deeper than material substitutions on a single contract. She pointed to specific numbers. Andrew's efficiency improvements have supposedly saved $28 million across 8 different Pentagon contracts over the past 4 months. That level of cost reduction is impossible without compromising quality or violating specifications. The numbers were damning. No legitimate engineering improvements could generate those savings without fundamental changes to materials, processes, or safety protocols. Patricia, what do you need from me? Complete documentation of all specification changes, recorded evidence of criminal intent, and testimony from other employees who've witnessed this fraud. Can you provide those? I have recorded conversations between William and Andrew planning to blame me for their specification violations. Tony has documented their surveillance operation, but we'll need more than just my word against theirs. Leave that to me. I have contacts who can arrange for an unannounced FAA compliance audit. But we need to be prepared for William's counterattack. That's when Patricia explained William's leverage strategy. He'd been collecting compromising information on board members, investors, and senior staff for years. Financial difficulties, personal problems, professional disputes, anything that could be used for blackmail or character assassination. He has files on everyone, including me. Financial records from my divorce, details about my consulting contracts, even personal communications with Pentagon contacts. William's prepared to destroy anyone who threatens his operation. Then how do we stop him? We get federal authorities involved before he can deploy his blackmail files. Once criminal investigators start asking questions, William's leverage becomes worthless. He can't blackmail federal agents. Patricia's plan was straightforward but risky. She'd contact her Pentagon procurement friends and request an immediate compliance audit of the North Star contract. Federal investigators would discover the specification violations and demand explanations. When William tried to blame me, we'd present evidence that destroyed their credibility completely. The timing was critical. William planned to announce Andrew's promotion to Chief Engineering Officer at next Tuesday's board meeting. That's when he'd also announce my reassignment to advisory status. Corporate speak for forced retirement. Let him make his move. Let Andrew present his fraudulent specifications in front of the entire board. Then we'll present evidence that destroys their credibility completely. I spent the weekend preparing. Tony provided copies of all surveillance logs and audio recordings Ashley had collected. I compiled side-by-side comparisons of original specifications versus Andrew's modifications for all 23 affected contract items. Most damaging was the recording of William and Andrew planning to frame me for their specification violations. Monday morning, William seemed unusually confident. He spent the day meeting privately with board members, presumably building support for Andrew's promotion. Ashley shadowed me constantly, attending meetings I hadn't invited her to and taking notes on every conversation. Around 3 p.m., Ashley approached me with a fake smile. "Michael, my grandfather wants to see you in his office. He mentioned something about finalizing transition plans." I walked into William's office to find him with Andrew and a man I didn't recognize wearing an FAA ID badge. "Michael, this is Inspector Williams from FAA Compliance Oversight. He has questions about our North Star contract specifications." My heart pounded, but I kept my expression neutral. This wasn't part of Patricia's plan. The audit wasn't supposed to start until after Tuesday's board meeting. Inspector Williams pulled out a folder. "Mr. Thompson, we've received reports of potential specification irregularities in your North Star contract submissions. Several items don't match our original procurement requirements. Can you explain these discrepancies?" I looked at the documents. They were Andrew's modified specifications with my name listed as the reviewing engineer. Inspector, I never approved these specifications. These modifications violate both safety standards and contract requirements. Andrew jumped in immediately. Michael, we discussed these efficiency improvements in multiple engineering review meetings. You signed off on all optimization measures. That's completely false. I specifically documented why these modifications would compromise equipment integrity and pilot safety. William leaned forward with practiced concern. Inspector Williams, I believe we have a communication breakdown here. Michael has been resistant to modernization efforts, and there seems to be confusion about which specifications represent our official position. Inspector Williams looked between us carefully. Who has final authority over engineering specifications in this company? Michael is our chief operations manager, Williams said smoothly. All technical decisions require his approval. Perfect trap. Either I accepted responsibility for Andrew's dangerous modifications, or I appeared incompetent before a federal inspector. William thought he'd cornered me completely. But I'd spent 12 years learning how to handle pressure, starting with combat situations in Afghanistan. You don't survive marine engineering without learning when to hold your ground. Inspector Williams, I'd like to request a formal review of all engineering documentation. I believe there have been unauthorized changes to approved specifications, and I have evidence that proves systematic fraud. Williams' expression flickered for just a moment. Michael, I don't think that's necessary. We can resolve any misunderstandings internally. Actually, Inspector Williams said, given the nature of these contracts and the seriousness of these allegations, a formal review is exactly what's required. The real battle was about to begin. What followed was 3 hours of controlled interrogation. Inspector Williams secured all computers and documentation while federal agents interviewed employees individually. William maintained his calm executive demeanor, but I noticed Andrew sweating through his expensive shirt. By 6 p.m., Inspector Williams had copies of every engineering report, email chain, and specification document from the past 10 months. More importantly, Tony had provided access to the surveillance logs and Ashley's audio recordings, evidence that would either support our case or destroy it completely. Mr. Thompson, we'll need your complete cooperation during this investigation. Please prepare all original documentation for review by our technical team tomorrow. After the federal agents left, William closed his office door and turned to me with barely controlled anger. Michael, you just made the biggest mistake of your career. This investigation will create problems for everyone, including you. The FAA doesn't appreciate contractors who can't manage their internal processes efficiently. The FAA appreciates contractors who don't commit fraud even less. You're walking a very dangerous line here. Andrew is family. I protect my family by any means necessary, and I protect my professional integrity and the pilots who depend on our equipment, including my son. That evening, Patricia called me at home. Michael, the investigation is proceeding faster than expected. Inspector Williams contacted FAA procurement directly. They're sending a full audit team tomorrow, and they want to interview you first thing in the morning. What about Williams' counterattack? He's already started. I received calls from 3 board members tonight asking about my confidence in your technical competence. Williams planting seeds of doubt about your mental stability and professional judgment. I wasn't surprised. Character assassination was his standard operating procedure. Tuesday morning arrived with unseasonable rain. The FAA audit team consisted of 4 technical specialists and 2 criminal investigators. They set up in our main conference room while employees whispered nervously throughout the building. At 10 a.m., William called the emergency board meeting that would determine everyone's fate. Ladies and gentlemen, we're facing an unfortunate situation created by miscommunication and resistance to necessary modernization efforts. William stood at the head of the boardroom table, projecting confidence despite the federal investigation happening down the hall. Andrew Blackstone has done exceptional work optimizing our processes and identifying cost savings across multiple contracts. Unfortunately, some senior staff have been resistant to these improvements. Andrew beamed from his seat beside the executive team, still believing his father could control the narrative. Before we discuss Andrew's promotion to Chief Engineering Officer, I want to address the federal investigation. This audit resulted from complaints by a disgruntled employee who disagreed with management decisions. Patricia spoke from across the table. William, are you referring to Michael Thompson's technical concerns about specification violations? I'm referring to Michael's inability to adapt to modern engineering practices and his attempts to undermine Andrew's legitimate improvements. Those aren't improvements, I said, standing up. They're dangerous modifications that violate federal contract terms and safety requirements. I connected my tablet to the room's display system. I believe this evidence will clarify the actual situation. What I showed them was devastating. Side-by-side comparisons of original specifications versus Andrew's modifications. Material strength reductions from 130,000 psi titanium to 45,000 psi aluminum. Eliminated safety tests. Compromised stress resistance standards. Every change violated both contract requirements and basic engineering principles. These modifications were made without my approval and submitted to FAA procurement under my name as reviewing engineer. Andrew jumped up. Those are preliminary efficiency studies. Michael approved all final optimizations after our engineering reviews. Actually, I said, activating my phone's audio, that's not what you told your father. Andrew's voice filled the room. Dad, what happens if the FAA asks technical questions I can't answer? Then William's unmistakable voice. Don't worry, Andrew. I've already briefed them that Michael has been resistant to efficiency improvements. If there are technical issues, we'll frame them as his failure to provide adequate support. The room went completely silent. Board members stared at William in shock. Those recordings are illegal and taken out of context, William said, his composure finally cracking. No, said a voice from the back of the room. They're evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. Inspector Williams walked in with 2 federal agents. We've completed our preliminary review. Mr. William Blackstone, Mr. Andrew Blackstone, and Ms. Ashley Blackstone, you're under arrest for conspiracy to defraud the United States government. What happened next was swift and decisive. Federal agents secured all company computers and phones. William and Andrew were handcuffed and escorted out while Ashley collapsed in her chair, finally understanding that Grandpa couldn't protect her from federal prosecutors. The charges were serious: conspiracy to defraud the government, falsifying federal contract specifications, and violations of the False Claims Act. The potential penalties included up to 20 years in federal prison and millions in fines. Patricia approached me as the agents finished collecting evidence. The board will need immediate leadership for the engineering department. Are you interested in the position you should have had years ago? 3 months later, I'm sitting in what used to be William's office reviewing specifications for upgraded stress testing equipment. The North Star contract was renegotiated with proper materials and realistic safety margins. Our engineering team expanded from 13 to 19 engineers, all hired based on competence rather than family connections. The investigation uncovered the full extent of the fraud. William had been systematically altering specifications across 8 different defense contracts over 18 months, claiming $28 million in fraudulent cost savings. The scheme wasn't just about the North Star contract. It was a pattern of criminal behavior designed to inflate profit margins at the expense of equipment safety. William pled guilty to federal fraud charges and received 6 years in federal prison plus $8.5 million in fines and restitution. Andrew was banned from government contracting permanently and faced multiple civil lawsuits from affected military units. Ashley lost her security clearance and accepted a plea deal for cooperation in exchange for 2 years probation. The real victory wasn't their punishment. It was rebuilding trust with FAA procurement and proving that experienced engineering judgment matters more than MBA cost optimization theories. Tony got promoted to senior union representative and implemented comprehensive worker protection protocols. We established a veteran preference hiring policy that gives priority to military veterans in technical positions. Patricia joined our board as chairman, ensuring proper executive oversight and maintaining her Pentagon connections. Most importantly, we now hire people who understand that aircraft components aren't about profit margins. They're about bringing pilots home alive. Every time I sign off on a specification now, I think about my son Danny working on those C-130s. The parts we build here might be the difference between his aircraft making it back to base or not. The aerospace industry is full of young MBAs who think they can optimize safety out of the equation. They don't understand that when you're building equipment for the military, you're not just dealing with numbers on a spreadsheet. You're dealing with somebody's son or daughter who's counting on that equipment to work when their life depends on it. If you've dealt with workplace nepotism or corrupt management, here's what I learned. Document everything. Every conversation, every email, every decision that seems wrong. Find allies who share your values, people who understand that doing the right thing matters more than keeping the boss happy. Build relationships with people who have influence outside your immediate chain of command. Patricia's Pentagon connections were what made the difference. Without her credibility and contacts, William might have succeeded in destroying my career and covering up the fraud. Most importantly, remember that sometimes fighting a broken system means taking risks that privileged kids will never understand. They've never had skin in the game. They've never had to worry about whether the equipment they approve will actually work when lives are on the line. Experience beats education when lives depend on your work. The classroom teaches you theories, but the real world teaches you consequences. When some kid fresh out of business school starts talking about cutting corners on safety protocols, remember that every shortcut they take is a risk they're forcing someone else to bear. William thought family connections and surveillance files could overcome basic physics and federal law. He was wrong. Andrew thought an MBA could substitute for 22 years of hands-on engineering experience. He was wrong too. In the end, the truth has a way of coming out. Titanium is stronger than aluminum. Experience matters more than connections. And integrity beats corruption every time, as long as you're willing to fight for it. That's my story. Michael Thompson, Senior Vice President of Engineering, Apex Defense Technologies. Still here, still fighting for quality over shortcuts, still making sure our equipment works when it matters most. And every day, I'm grateful that my son Danny gets to fly an aircraft built by people who understand that safety isn't negotiable. The Blackstone family learned that the hard way. Some lessons cost more than others.